What's happening, folks? It's John here from Alpha Fitness, and I'm joined by Mel from W2, and we are the Breast of Friends. And we're in Maggie's Cancer Centre, Dundee, and we're joined by some lovely ladies today: Sue, Carla, and oh wait, we've got a bit of a mistake here. Sorry, folks. We've got these labels on us. Well, mine says breast cancer. I'm not really defined by breast. What does yours say?
Prostate cancer.
And you?
And mine is breast cancer.
And mine breast cancer too. Breast cancer times 2.
Breast cancer squared. Okay. No, I think we should rip these up because these do not define us. So let's just get them off, rip them up, and put our real labels on with our actual names. There we go. That's much better. So, I'm John, and you are?
Sue.
And?
I'm Carla.
And?
And I'm Julie. Matt.
Yes. Okay, so do you want to discuss the purpose of the film today?
So welcome to film 3 in the Breast of Friends series. This film is called Living Through and Despite Cancer. And what we're going to discuss in this film with our friends here is what is it like to have cancer and to carry on living your life, and to highlight what support and help is along the way. And also we're going to zoom in on how we can best look after ourselves, particularly with a focus on nutrition. Delighted that Sue, who's a nutritionist, is going to give us some thoughts and advice on that. Going back to our cookie jar, if you remember, the sand in the cookie jar, which is up there, represents the life admin and all the things that we have to do, pay bills and answer emails. And the pebbles represent sort of projects that we might have, you know, a garden project or buying a new car or a holiday. But what we're focusing on is the 7 key stones and making time for them. And in this film, what we'd like to do is the stone is about looking forward, and thank you very much, and thinking about starting with the end in mind. And instead of looking back and asking why and why me, this is about looking forward and visualizing a future without cancer or past cancer. So that's going to go in our cookie jar, and it's the main focus for today. So that's what we're going to talk about and think about. So what about some more introductions then, and who've we got in the room? So it'd be nice to hear from everybody, and what stage is the treatment, or what's your involvement with cancer, and what's important to you? If you had one of those big stones, what would you put in the cookie jar? Who's going to go first?
Well, I'll go first.
Okay.
So, I'm affected by cancer through my mother. She got breast cancer probably about a year and a half ago now. They were doing a routine scan, and they said to her, found a small, it wasn't even quite a lump, it was just a small, I don't know if you call it an infraction, whatever it was, just a little tiny something. And luckily, they caught it extremely early and were able to get rid of it. I unfortunately found out last night that she's got to go in for more scans because they've noticed something again. So that's kind of, if you watch the first video, that will have changed the dynamic of what's happening, which is quite interesting. So it's very, very important that you check yourself, and that you go and you take your mammograms, and you take every opportunity you can because people miss these things, don't they? They just think, I'll go another year. And if my mum hadn't went, she would have not known, and they might not have caught it so early. So that's how cancer's affecting me, and I think Sue, it affects you in a sort of similar way, that it's actually someone in your life, isn't it?
That's right. Yes, my husband has advanced prostate cancer, so unfortunately his wasn't picked up early. So he was diagnosed in December, and we've been on the road of chemo and radiotherapy, and we're not sure where it's going. But as I'm very closely, obviously involved with my husband, I'm sort of the carer in this picture. So, which is equally challenging in different kinds of ways to someone who has
Absolutely,
cancer.
yeah.
Mhm.
Because you're there, you're going through it to an extent,
Yeah.
and you also maybe, even though you do a whole bunch of things to try and help, you might feel like you're, how can I, I want to do something, I really want to help out there. And what about you, Carla?
Well, I joined the breast cancer journey back in December. My partner found a lump,
Right.
and I'd been checking myself meticulously, I thought, and apparently that lump had been there for about 6 months by the time it was found.
Really?
And subsequently have gone through having triple negative breast cancer, and finished my treatment 2 days ago.
Right.
9 months to the day from it starting.
Wow.
9 months to
Wow.
the day. And hopefully I'm looking forward to, with the help of, I can help improve my nutrition
Yes.
immensely. That's a big thing for me, because there isn't any other treatment left now, to keep myself free of cancer for hopefully my lifetime now.
Sure, yeah. Well, Sue can definitely help you with
Yeah,
that, because you
without a
guys know
doubt.
each other.
Well,
A little bit, yeah.
yeah, very inspiring.
What was the phrase you used? Triple?
Triple negative,
What
which
does that
means
mean?
it's not hormonally charged.
Right, okay.
So where you can have other medications like tamoxifen and whatever for the other kinds of breast cancer, there is nothing for the type that I have.
Oh, really?
So I am doing a research program, but nutrition for me is the biggest thing I can do to help myself. That and exercise, which I've always been an advocate of anyway.
Yes.
I'm a lousy cook, so I'm relying on definitely on Sue giving me some tips. Without
Oh.
a doubt.
I'm not a great cook either. You're quite good though,
I
Mel.
love cooking.
Yeah, you're quite good. What about you, Julie?
So this week is my cancerversary. It's been a year since diagnosis. I had invasive ductal carcinoma, which I initially found in my armpit, which by chance I was checking a mole for melanoma and found a lump instead.
Sure.
Was too young for the mammogram, routine mammogram, so unless I'd found that by chance, then I wouldn't be here possibly.
Wow.
So I've gone through the treatment. I've had chemo first, then surgery, then radiotherapy, and now I'm on tamoxifen. My body didn't react particularly well to chemo, so I had pneumonia, so I was hospitalised for a while with that as well. But bizarrely, I don't think that the physical side has been the worst part.
Right, okay.
It's been relatively manageable.
Yeah. Okay. And you, Mel?
Yeah, so I had breast cancer for the first time. I like what you said, is it a cancerversary? Is that what you called it? So for me it's the same. So it's 20 years since I first had it, and 10 years since I got it again. It wasn't a reoccurrence, it was a whole new one. And I think it was the same as yours, the technical term. So yeah, I had radical mastectomy, it was in the lymph system, and chemotherapy and radiotherapy. The second time for me was not nearly as bad because I found the lump earlier. So I still had to have a mastectomy, but I didn't have to have a lot more treatment. I had my ovaries out because it was estrogen receptor positive and all that sort of thing. So, and I've subsequently found out through genetic testing that I've got BRCA2, is that how you say it?
Yeah.
BRCA2. So thanks very much for introducing yourselves and telling us a bit about the journey.
I actually had a quick question.
Yeah.
So forgive my ignorance, but what is the start date when you get your checkups, your regular checkups? You said you didn't reach the age
50.
bracket. Is it 50? It's 50. Ah, okay. Right. I didn't know.
And it stops at 70.
Really?
Yeah, had my last one.
It stops at 70?
Yeah.
Why would it stop?
The chances of you getting breast cancer are less as you get older, and it tends to be slower growing, I believe.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah, you can request them by one of the vans that you see around in different towns.
Okay.
But you won't be called for.
It's every
I'm on
3
the
years.
After
Is
the
it?
70.
Yeah.
At the moment.
Yeah.
I think Julie's story though is really powerful. You know, as you say, you were checking for melanoma and moles and things and found that lump, and we've talked about that in the last
Yeah.
video with Professor Hayes and the first video about about how to check yourself. So if you're not sure about how to check yourself, what you're looking for, have a look at Breast of Friends 1, which is all about that, and there's links on there. But it's just about being proactive, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it's very, very important to make sure you're looking after yourself, absolutely, and
Yeah.
taking every opportunity that the health service offers you. You know, some people just don't. Did you want to share your little story with
Yeah,
us?
I tell you what, coming here today and seeing you, Carla, without your hair, I think, good for you, girl, because I remember the day when I didn't have hair like this, and I was going to share with you about, what's it like living with cancer. Well, one of the realities is often that people lose their hair, not necessarily, but they do. Did you lose your hair?
I lost the top of my hair. I used the cool cap,
All right.
which was excruciating,
Oh,
but I felt it was worth it for me
right.
because I've kept most of my hair.
Excellent. Well, it's beautiful hair.
Sorry, was that a cool cap?
Cool cat.
Cool cap, how does that work?
So you have a very unattractive scrum cap,
Like a rugby sort of
like
thing?
a rugby scrum cap.
I
that's
can
put
see
on
you
your
in
head.
that,
No,
that'd be fetching.
and your head is technically frozen throughout the course of your chemo treatment. And the rationale for that is that it freezes the follicles, so it doesn't the chemo drug doesn't actually get to the follicles, and your hair remains. I mean, I would have to say it was good for me in terms that it kept most of my hair, but you do have quite a lot of hair loss. So I did use a wig as well.
Right.
How,
Yes.
how does that? Sorry, how does that work? Like, how do they freeze your head? I can't. Are you? Is
You're attached to a machine,
Uh-huh.
and the machine just pumps cool stuff into your head, and it freezes.
Does it hurt? Like, is it
Yes.
so cold it
So
hurts?
for the first 20 minutes, it's excruciating, and then it's bearable, But you've got a longer chemo time. You need to go into chemo a couple of hours earlier
Uh-huh.
to get your head temperature down and stay a bit longer, so you're gently raising the temperature again. So it makes the whole process a bit longer.
Gosh, I've never even heard of that. That's so interesting.
My
But
husband
people
re-
are getting, increasingly better results with it
Yeah.
as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, very good.
The oncologist initially told me that I would just lose my hair, and I said, well, I'll give the cool cap a go. And I've met other women that have had an opportunity to have the cool cap, and they've kept some of their hair as well.
And were you prescribed like a special shampoo to go along with it, or do you have to wear like
No,
a
they
hat
suggest that
afterwards?
you don't really shampoo your hair. Very mild shampoo, but you don't shampoo it very often, so you do have a bit of a grease look.
like mine today. I'm on day 4, I think. So were you going to say something, Sue?
Yeah, my husband decided not to have it because he didn't have a lot of hair anyway. But somebody that was having chemotherapy at the same time had a massive gentleman, massive head of hair, and he had the cap, and he didn't lose his hair at all. So it was really worth his while
Wow.
to do it. So yeah,
I
it's even
think
for
it-
men too.
Yes, it's great. It's amazing how technology's changed. I think they were just coming in 20 years ago when I had mine. But, I think everybody responds differently, and the important thing is you respond in the way that is right for you.
Yeah.
And I was working one day and just sort of ran my fingers through my hair, and this great bunch of hair came out. And so I zipped off to the ladies to put it down the toilet, and that's when I just made the decision I'm having my head shaved. So I phoned the hairdressers and said, can you stay late tonight? And they shaved my head for me. So I decided, I thought, well, I'll try. Do blondes have more fun? So I had a little blonde curly wig whilst I was in chemo. I didn't wear it a lot, just high days and holidays. But the rest of the time I just wore head scarves and hats, and had a lovely collection of hats. But the funny story was that when you're trying to live through breast cancer, and despite it, I was determined to try and carry on with normality. And I got invited to a burn supper in the January. So I got all dressed up with my wig, and I'd had chemotherapy that day. It was a Friday. Went out with my glad rags on. And of course, what do you do in a burn supper? You sit there listening to burns, and there's a bottle of whiskey on the table, which I never drink anyway. and unfortunately, a few tops of whiskey later on, I had to be pretty much helped out of the place. I think the mixture with the chemo. But what was the worst bit was when I got outside, my friend was helping me into a Land Rover, and I fell over into a rhododendron bush, and I'm like flailing around in this bush, and he hoiked me out of the bush, minus the wig. So I'm there completely bald, and the wig's sort of floating around in the bush, in the rhododendron bush, as everybody's leaving the event. So what I learned that day is blondes don't have more fun when they're on chemotherapy, and don't ever drink whiskey and chemotherapy together. It doesn't work too well. But what about funny stories from you? Carla, you were telling us about
Yeah, you were.
what happened
Well,
along the way.
probably have
Miss
to
out-
modify it.
Miss out the name.
Yeah,
the
I'll have to
first name.
modify it a little bit. But post getting my diagnosis, driving home, and my partner's in the car in front on the speakerphone speaking away, and decided, we have to give a name to this cancer. He said, so that you can get rid of it and you can focus on that.
I think you said kick its ass. You can
Yeah,
say it.
well, I
Go
was
for it.
going to use that in the next bit.
Oh,
Thank you for
sorry.
that, John.
I thought you were going to swear.
Oh, I can swear, but
Okay.
we'll modify it again. But yeah, he then quickly came up with the name, which just happened to be the name of my recent ex that I had really kicked his ass into touch already, and thought, right, okay, we're not going to use that one again. So we went with Hector of all names. Laughed quite a bit about that, but then somebody just after that, when I went home and I shared this with people, came up with, there's a song by the Smiths about Hector has a gun to his head or whatever, that kind of thing. So it was quite appropriate. It actually fitted really well, and from then on known as Hector until Hector left the house, and Hector's friends left the house as well, and left the building, so to speak.
Excellent.
End
That's
of Hector.
brilliant.
And hopefully Hector will never knock
Hector
at the door
ain't
again.
getting back.
Do you still listen to the song, or do you?
Yeah, that song now means something to me,
Yeah.
obviously. And the name
Interesting.
Hector, I used to think Hector's house, probably you're too young for that, John.
I do really like the Smiths, but I'm the worst person with the names of songs.
Uh-huh.
So I mean, I think I've actually got them on my phone right now.
You're like me, but this song was just appropriate, so
Yeah.
now I know this song. But do you remember Hector House? Is that
I
any
do.
good to me?
No.
No? Remember?
So,
That's too bad.
Yeah, so it's that as well, so the name Hector's forever.
but if I hear it again, I will think of you.
But it's history.
I'll research it out.
Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Someone told me about the Shadows the other day, and I never knew about the band The Shadows, which is Cliff Richard's original band. But when I listened to them, I realised I knew loads of their songs, and they've been used for loads of adverts. So I'm going to listen to that. It's going to be good.
It's worth listening to. Yeah,
Shall we move on with the questions? Okay, so a few of the questions that we have. First one being, what has been the biggest challenge for you living through cancer? And obviously for yourself, Sue, I mean, when someone in your life has got cancer, especially when it's your partner and you live with them, you're really living through it. So would you care to start?
It's obviously not as difficult as going through cancer yourself, but it does have a lot of challenges, not least because my husband was quite ill by the time he was diagnosed, and so by that time I was having to do pretty much everything in the house, in the garden, so it was very challenging just to be able to keep up. My life sort of fairly imploded really, and I wasn't able to do a lot outside of doing those kind of things. And I think because so many things all happened at the same time, it was almost that I woke up in the morning and think, what's going to happen today? Because like you, my husband got several infections during chemotherapy, so I ended up in hospital. And you just find it so hard to think nothing else is going to happen. And I think I still have that I'm waiting because
On edge type thing.
my husband's situation is not so plain sailing as yours, in that it's there for good, and we have to live more with it than through it. So,
Yes, sure.
so it's just that not knowing what to expect next. You hope nothing will come next, but if something, if it feels not very well, then you just automatically assume that it must be something to do with cancer.
Yeah.
So I think for me those are the hardest. He's feeling much better after
Oh,
treatments,
good.
so you know he's able to do more things now. So that's got better. But I think this living with what might happen next is the hardest for me. Yeah.
What about you, Carla?
Um,
What would you say
the thing that
was
springs to mind
biggest
for me
challenge?
is slightly different in that, without going into what the problems were, I had so many other problems going on in my life that all of a sudden cancer had become the focus for everybody else. They never ever saw the other problems that I had, which were insurmountable to me, and all of a sudden it was cancer. But the one thing that I couldn't get, to this day, nobody ever did anything about it. In my circle of friends and family, the only person that actually knows the type of cancer that I've got and the significance of it is me. It's breast cancer to everybody else, but the type of cancer I've got was very, very fearful. It was an aggressive cancer.
Sure.
It was, my prognosis hadn't, it still isn't brilliant for the next 3 years, but nobody else took it on board to actually look at the kind of cancer I had. And I tried to get people to say, my sister, my partner, whatever, to read up on it, and they didn't want to, they didn't see the importance of that. So I would say to any carer, anybody in the caring capacity, try and find out what it is that the person's really fearful of, because to me it was that. To me it was that nobody else could understand why I'd gone back to my consultant and said, no, I'm not happy with this treatment, can we do... I had other illnesses that meant that my treatment was compromised initially, my chemo. And because I'd come through the first 3 chemos very successfully, very well, I'd handled it quite well, I didn't see why they couldn't go back and reinstate the full course of treatment. My consultant wasn't in agreement, so I just changed consultant until I found one that would actually listen to me.
Quite
And
right.
it worked, and I went through the full treatment then and felt that I had been treated properly and successful, and that I've got the best chance for the future now.
That's real
So
good.
that was the challenge for me.
That's real good. It's good that you changed and you were
Yeah,
prepared and you knew what you wanted.
Yeah, and I persevered very politely and very whatever, but I needed somebody to listen to me. That was uppermost for me.
Yeah, that's. Do you know what? I don't really know that much about the type of cancer my mother had or now maybe has again. And maybe it's because of the way that she approached it. She's always like everything's fine, and I kind of believe if you have a certain mindset, it's better. So I almost didn't want to have to do any research that it might worry me more, and therefore the universe would feel my worry, and it's all a bit silly. But now I kind of feel like I want to look into it more, because
Perhaps.
I thought in the first interview I'm saying that's all taken care of, but it's not. So go do your checks and all that kind of stuff. Sorry, Julie, what would you say is your biggest challenge living through cancer?
I think my biggest challenge was the psychological impact that it had. Bizarrely, as I said before, the physical part I managed. I saw it as a project. It was almost like being pregnant.
Right, okay.
It was, you do this and this and this, and it's a bit of a conveyor belt in terms of process of treatments, and I think that's helpful in some ways. So I focused on trying to get through the physical side of it as best I could, but mentally that was definitely my biggest challenge. I've got 2 young children who were 7 and 10 at the time of diagnosis, and that was very hard.
Yeah, no, it would be. Absolutely. That's similar to yourself, Mel.
I know, it strikes a chord, because I think that was my biggest challenge. I was self-employed, I was a single mother. The children were 3 and 8 when it first happened, and life carries on. I remember having to do Halloween parties and sort of interrupt the party to go and throw up. I'd just go to the toilet and then I'd be back on duty as a mum. You can't have downtime. You can't have downtime from work or from motherhood. And I think, I heard somebody on the radio recently, and she said, I feel guilty that I brought cancer into my family's life. And I understood what she was saying, but I thought, no, don't feel guilt. You can't help it. It just happened. Where's the tissue? No, there's
It's
tissues.
there, yeah.
And,
do you want a break?
No,
or-
no, no.
No?
No.
Okay.
I think that the key is, we try and carry on as normally as possible. We
Yeah.
can, but we're human beings,
Yeah.
and it's not easy some days.
Yeah.
No.
I think cancer evokes such a powerful emotion as well, because a lot of the stories that I have about cancer were all death. It was, I didn't know that many people that actually survived it and lived with it. So for me, I immediately went to that end point. So bringing my mind back constantly has been the hardest part of the journey, and will continue to be the hardest part of the journey, I think, for me. We had a chat before about once you finish treatment and you look okay and you're out and about and you're at the school gates and everybody imagines that everything's back to normal. It's never really back to normal, because you've always got that little worry in the back of your head. And I liken it a bit to, there's been a major crime that's happened to you,
Yep.
but it's been you that's done that major crime, because it's your body that's almost you now don't trust anymore. So if somebody burgles your house, you can put locks in the doors and
Sure.
but it's internal, this. So yes, we've had little signs along the way, but all of a sudden then you're into a cancer diagnosis, and that's been quite a hard thing to get your head around and to start to trust yourself, your body again.
Yeah.
Certainly that's what I found.
I suppose the locks and the safeguards from the burglar would be, I'm presuming this is maybe what you meant when you said physically you found it, you coped with it really well. Maybe you had like a fitness regime that you did, and your nutrition was on point, and that in itself is probably quite, apart from what it actually does, it gives you a focus to fight, to hit these marks each day.
Well, I
maybe?
think one of the things that cancer also does, it's takes your sense of control away. I was a very controlled person who had everything organised for the day and juggling, as we all do with different parts of our lives, and as suddenly that control goes away, and going from a person who was out working and managing and with the kids to being a patient was completely alien for me. So I used nutrition and exercise and spirituality and all of a whole gamut of things to try and bring some control back. And certainly I feel that using nutrition has been hugely helpful for me, because I radically changed my diet upon diagnosis. I probably went through a bit of detox with getting rid of all of the junk. And probably you would tell me not to do it the way that I did it, but
Too quick.
I did it really quickly. I probably had 4 weeks of detox, but my diet helped me, I think, mentally as much as anything, get through the treatment in a relatively good nick, apart from the pneumonia, but I think that was probably bad luck. So that was about taking a bit of power and control back from me. Possibly the same.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, for me, everybody kept saying to me, I had to put my dogs into respite right at the start, and that was really, really difficult, because that was my source of exercise, and getting them back. Everybody kept saying, "Oh, are you ready for this? Are you ready for this?" And they couldn't see that it was. I needed it. I needed something to focus on, and I needed to be getting back, and to do the walking and to get back. So it was that, and the nutrition for me was massive. And that's where Sue had come into my life as well.
I think that's a great lead in. Sue, could you tell us a bit more, as a nutritionalist? You've heard from us all saying nutrition is key, but what advice have you got for people that are affected in this way?
I think it's really interesting what you say, that everything around you seemingly is out of control or out of your control, but things like eating, things like exercise can definitely be under your control. I've seen it so many times with the workshops that I do, meeting different people here, that if they have something to put into practice, something to do, then that is a really helpful thing for them. So I give workshops here, and I just use healthy eating because healthy eating is important for all of us, whether we have cancer or we don't, you know, it's still just as relevant. So I use what's called the Eat Well Guide as my basis for everything that I talk about, and I do cooking to go alongside what I share. And the Eat Well Guide gives a symbolic picture of what healthy eating should look like. So it's a big circle. It used to be called a plate, but they've moved away from being a plate. And it divides that circle into segments to give you a very quick visualization of what proportion the food group should be in. So a third of our diet should be fruit and vegetables, and that is a very important thing for us all, but I think particularly if we've had a diagnosis of cancer, because fruit and vegetables are so important for vitamins, for minerals, for fibre, for antioxidants. They are so key to, you know, boosting our immune system, just so many, and not least the attractiveness that they bring to what we eat, because that's very important too, in the different tastes and textures. So a third of our diet, I always encourage to be at least a third of what we eat, and another third carbohydrate, but not just any carbohydrate, whole grain carbohydrate. And this is an area that I find most people go with the fruit and the vegetable. That's, you know, they see that, but the carbohydrate, we live in an age where carbohydrates, you know, we're trying to get rid of them, cut them out of our diets, so many people, and that's not a healthy way to eat, because a third of our diet should be carbohydrate. That's where our energy comes from, should come from, and a lot of vitamins are associated, and also fibre. Fibre is so important to us, and I talk a lot about the different whole grains, because a lot of people are not familiar with the idea of using brown rice instead of white rice, and things like pearl barley, which might seem old-fashioned to some people, but it's such a healthy whole grain, and, you know, posh people use pearl barley risotto in risottos instead of rice. It's a healthier thing than rice. Porridge oats, you know, we lived in Scotland, you couldn't get much healthier than including porridge oats in different ways in your diet. You know, bread rather than white bread, you know, choose granary, wholemeal. If it's got seeds in or nuts, that all adds to, you know, the benefit that it can give you. You know, the cereal that we choose, porridge, you can't really get better than porridge, but, you know, going for a cereal that's got more fibre in it rather than things like cornflakes or Rice Krispies, which are a bit...
Like a muesli, maybe?
A muesli, yeah, because that, you know, will have oats and fruit and nuts and seeds. And so
Makes it eat
perfect.
quicker still
Yeah.
than cold.
Yeah. And then I also think that including oily fish in our diet is really important too. And I think for some people eating oily fish is not so attractive, but I think if, you know, it doesn't have to be, you know, sardines counts, tin of sardines on toast, brilliant lunch. You know, mashing all the bones as well to get the calcium.
You're not liking that. you have the one with the tomato sauce.
No, I do love sardines though.
Yeah, I mean salmon, trout, you know, mackerel. These are all oily fish, and omega-3 is a fatty acid in oily fish that has got so many benefits, and not least for your cells, really boosts your immune system and helps the memory. And they're doing a lot of work on omega-3 and depression, sleep, dementia. So I think it's a big, you know, it's a big area that we'll be seeing more of, really. So I always promote oily fish. I know there's a lot of difference of opinion on dairy, and I meet lots of people who decide to cut dairy from their diets. It's a personal thing, and I don't ever say to somebody, don't do that. I don't think that's a good idea, because it's back to this, you doing something for yourself, and that's most important, really. What I would say, that if you do remove dairy, then you need to be really careful that you get sufficient calcium, sufficient fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin D, vitamin A, vitamin E, and it's easy not to get sufficient if you cut out dairy. What I would prefer to see, I think, is maybe reducing dairy and having some, but maybe not eating a great big chunk of cheese, but a small portion of cheese. A quarter of a pint of milk a day will give you the calcium that you need. A little bit of yogurt. For me, that would be, I think, the preferable way. But you can get calcium from other places in your diet, but it takes a little bit of making sure that you do that.
Where else can you get calcium from then, Sue? if people aren't aware of-
Green vegetables, but you have to eat a lot of green vegetables to
Quite
get.
a large volume.
It is, but the oily fish, if you can mash the bones in,
Yeah.
that's a good source of. Baked beans are not bad. Some of the grains, the flour would have calcium added to it. So it's just, you have to educate yourself on where you would get your calcium from, because it's so easy when you have dairy. It's there, and it's quite a large amount.
I want to say figs, but it's maybe
Yeah,
not
dried
It is-
fruit.
There is
Yeah,
dried fruits.
can be.
I'm not sure it's figs, but there is.
Dried fruit would give you quite a good proportion of iron, because if we just talk about meat, I know there's a bit of a thing about anti-red meat for people who have had a diagnosis of cancer. And I think what we have to be careful about is that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Maybe not cut out all red meat, but maybe just have it once or twice a week,
Sure.
and just a small amount. And what I do is, if I'm making a spag bol, I maybe don't use as much meat, but I put in more tomatoes, or I add some lentils, so there's not as much meat. But when we've got red meat in our diet, then it's much easier to be sure that we're getting our iron supply. Just moderation in everything would be where I'm coming from. Not cutting out food groups, not cutting out different foods necessarily. So just a little bit of moderation. But having said that, I have friends who've cut out dairy for many, many, many years and are still here to tell the tale. And that's been, they would say, one of the things that's helped them have control in their lives. So never say never. I think we just have to be open-minded, but be aware of the possible pitfalls of going in a certain direction. We could talk about nutrition for hours and hours
For
and
sure,
hours.
sure.
But
Fascinating.
probably
Thank
talked
you.
enough. But
Would you advise someone to supplement with like a calcium supplement or something like that, or so would you rather they just got it from the food?
I personally am not for supplements
Okay.
myself. I think it's far better if you are eating a balanced diet where you should be getting sufficient nutrients. Possibly, if you don't like any oily fish, it's quite difficult to get omega-3 from foods without eating fish, but you can get them from
Nuts.
seeds and nuts. But the quality isn't as good as the omega-3 that's in fish. So maybe in that case having an omega-3 supplement, but I just think it's better, so much better to get it from food.
From my opinion and my knowledge, you don't want to supplement with omega-3, 6 and 9, because 6 and 9 is readily available in most people's bodies, so you want to just get 3, because if you go 3, 6 and 9, you'll get 3 certainly, but you increase your 6 and 9 and therefore you've got the same net result, which I don't know if that's why you're saying 3.
I think in
regularly.
natural food you get those, because the proportion of the 3, the 6 and the 9 is actually quite important. And if you're eating a balanced diet, you would get that balance. If you're taking supplements, you might get out of kilter some of if you see what I'm getting at. I think you have to be also quite careful with a calcium supplement, because you can't overdo the supplement. And we're all different. You certainly would need to get your GP, to help you with that one, really. Better to find ways of getting it from food, I would say.
So So keep it balanced.
Keep
which
it
is something
balanced.
that I always
Everything
talk
in
about as well.
moderation.
Everything
keep
in
it balanced.
moderation. Keep
I
it
think
balanced.
just a quick
I like it.
one. Fat, I think, is an interesting one, and reducing the amount of saturated fat in our diet. I know it's contentious at the moment, and people are questioning whether the research of the past has been right, but I still think that we should be eating more oils from plant sources than fat from animal sources, and reducing our saturated fat loads, because that certainly has links to breast cancer, prostate cancer. So just being careful about the amount of lard, butter, cream, cheese, these kind of high animal fat content foods. And stop me now, because I could just go on and on and on.
Could I just make one point about nutrition and treatment?
Sure.
Because I think it's a very under-acknowledged aspect of your recovery in medical world, and certainly during my chemo treatment, and I don't know if you were the same, but you were told to increase your calorie input constantly and eat ice cream, eat cheese, eat pizza, eat burgers, eat lots of stuff so that
Really?
so that you don't lose your BMI, so that you're not going to put your body into undue stress. And actually you're encouraged to put quite a lot of weight on throughout the course of the treatment, so that you don't get to a point that people are worried about you losing too much weight. And I think a lot needs to be recognised about the powerful benefits that food can have in your immune system when you're going through all of this, that isn't at the moment. And if I had won the lottery this year, I would certainly be giving money to Ninewells to look at how to develop that side of things throughout the cancer journey, because it certainly is something that isn't really recognised at all. And having had a huge epiphany about my fruit and vegetables and eating 9 to 10 portions of fruit and vegetables a day, to then have to have pneumonia and be in hospital for a week, when I was offered macaroni and chips and burgers and sausages, it was very difficult for me to actually cope with that.
Yeah.
My husband would agree with you on that one, for sure. Yeah, it is
So-
very difficult. The amounts of money that hospitals are working with
Absolutely.
to feed a person
Yeah.
per day is challenging.
Yeah.
But I take your point absolutely, that it is really it is really essential to eat well. Years ago, when I've worked in chemotherapy departments, the biggest problem was people losing weight
Yeah.
because they were sick and
Yeah.
diarrhea.
Do they use the MUS system for that as well? So
Yeah,
use
they
that in
did
cure-
too.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
yes.
that is kind of, calories dense, get them in.
Yeah.
The main thing is just getting the calories in, but not
But
necessarily from the right sources.
these days, the biggest problems that I see here at Maggie's are people putting on weight, too much weight in their diet, because of what you're talking about, and they're on medication that tend to put on weight. They're maybe not working, so they're sitting around more, snacking more, comfort eating more, and the whole issue is now helping people to get back to a healthy weight after treatment, rather than what used to be the case of building people up.
Yeah.
I think sadly they're still building people up in the wrong kind of way.
It's
and
almost
would
went
be
the
more
other way, where people are putting on
Yeah.
more weight, as opposed to
Yeah.
the classic sort of ideas that somebody would lose weight and become very,
Yeah.
very frail. Wow, that's
And we have a weight management group that runs here for people with a diagnosis of cancer who are often so heavy that they can't have the surgery that's necessary until
oh my
they've
gosh, really?
Yeah, so it is a big problem.
It's
Yeah.
that.
I mean, we know obesity is a big problem generally, but amongst cancer sufferers it is.
Wow. Well, funnily enough, I've got a whole bunch of questions here. We've actually answered quite a few of them.
Yeah.
Remember, I said we just naturally answer things within it. So, God,
I'm keen to explore, that's so interesting about nutrition and how it can help us in that, putting ourselves into the best position possible, both before before, during, and afterwards. What's been your experience of some of the things that you've done that you would advise people to consider or to think about? You mentioned a bit of spirituality, or what are some of the things that you have taken part in or done for yourself that have been helpful, and including your husband? Are we allowed to know your husband's name? Sorry?
Ian, yeah.
Ian.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you know, what have you done that's been helpful that you'd pass on to others?
I kind
You're
of
reading,
saw it
probably.
as a bit of a project.
Yes.
Because that's where my
Like
mind
yourself.
goes to. So I looked at pretty much all aspects of my life and chunked them into categories because I like to sort things. But so I had my diet and exercise. Then I looked at my kind of social support and how I wanted my life to be and who I wanted around me at going through the journey. Looked at my kind of spirituality. As you can tell, I'm from Northern Ireland and come from a very religious country which isn't always practicing the right kind of religion. So there was a bit about me that really felt that this was a bad thing because I'd done something wrong, that God had given me this. So there was a whole exploration of that for me that I needed to go into. But then just also things like putting myself first. I think one of the things that we've talked about is you often, my life before it didn't have boundaries around me. I did everything for everybody else. So I indulged myself in Reiki sessions, which were hugely beneficial to me. Walking with the dogs was a must every day, needed to do that. There was no compromise. Had to be at the school gates because I wanted to be there every day. And just general little goals. Listened to lots of podcasts. When the negative chatter went into my head, I got onto Oprah Winfrey podcasts or the likes and listened to lots of them. Got myself into Netflix or whatever period drama that I could for distraction. So it was like a bit of a support plan that I put together. And that was the thing that gave me hope. And listened to positive stories. I searched the internet, trolled it for positive stories and listened to them constantly. There's a lot of Californian voices going on in my head because generally you find a lot of sort of North American stories that come over, but focused on them constantly. So when I hear, a negative story like that Rachel Bland recently just passing away, tried to combat that with another positive story so that my head was hearing that all the time. Listened to a lot of self-hypnosis and came into Maggie's, and we'll talk about Maggie's later, but a huge array of stuff in here and just that feeling of being valued, I think was hugely important.
Yeah.
So it's been quite busy.
You really attacked it. You should have like an actual booklet. You should make a booklet. These are all the things you could do, and just
Fantastic.
go straight for it.
And do you think it's been really helpful?
Oh, it's been hugely helpful. It has been simultaneously the worst thing and the best thing that's ever happened to me.
That's
I would say the
often.
same.
I would say the same for my
Would you?
husband and I, yeah.
Say the same for all.
Without a doubt, say
Yeah.
the
Worst and best thing, isn't that amazing?
You take
And
each
what-
day, you take each day as it comes,
Yes.
and you just try and enjoy that day.
Yeah.
And we've been up and down to Edinburgh. I can't tell you how many times for Ian's treatment, but we've done a special treat in Edinburgh. We've gone somewhere and had a nice tea and cake somewhere, or lunch out. We've gone to a museum, or gone to the Botanic Gardens, and we've tried to make the journeys down there not just with
Not just
not
about
so great stuff, but to
Yeah.
do something
Positive and to
positive.
take control of yourself.
Yeah.
And what about you, Carla? What sort of things did you do to help yourself along the way? 2 days post-treatment, you're right in the thick of it, really.
I had to learn to say no, to be
Right.
honest. There's an awful lot of kindness came from people that I least expected. I found that the people who were my friends really weren't. And the ones who I thought were just acquaintances pitched up, and they were the ones that were most helpful. I made far too many coffee dates. And it's great, but it's exhausting. You're getting yourself ready to go out and you're going to do things. And I thought, so I would say limit those things. Imagine your cancer and all the bad things or whatever are in a box or in a bubble. Bad thoughts pop the bubbles. The box sits in a corner. You visit it when you want to. You do visit it every day. There's no doubt about it. You think that you'll get through this, as I did, unscathed. I think the first couple of months it seemed like a walk in the park, and then bang, it hit me. Going through chemo is challenging, to say the least. Nutrition really helps because you get your blood results and things drop all the time. Calcium was a big one for me, and they wanted me to take calcium supplements, and I was a bit like, no, I'll get this out with food and work through it. You've got all sorts of fears coming in. You'll be met with all sorts of challenges through normal life throughout your journey. Be prepared and be resilient. Sit back and say, well, I'll allow myself to be upset by this for half an hour, but at the end of the day, I'm rocking right through this regardless of what anybody throws at me, but I'm coming through the other side. I have 2 boys to live for. I have my dog. Sadly, I lost one of my dogs during the treatment. All these hurdles are enough to really bring you down. You're already down there. You're already down at rock bottom, and then something hits you. So you need that box. You need to put it to one side and have the rest of your life coming back up. And then you'll visit that box less and less and less until it's discarded. It's gone.
Like it.
You've kicked its ass and it's gone.
Like Hector.
Hector left very quickly in
In the box.
His pals came along and they were excommunicated as well. And the box, their suitcase, so to speak, has now been turfed out as well. It's gone.
I think it's interesting, this idea of visualization of pictures and that just getting through it and despite it and all the rest of it. That's
You
great.
used that as well, didn't you? You used a picture of yourself as a famous female hairdresser.
Yeah, I used to visualise myself as Sigourney Weaver, the character from Alien, and I would, they taught me this at the hospital about visualisation and relaxation, so I'd go through my body with that huge grippy flamethrower gun she had, looking for and zapping cancer cells. I have no idea for hell, but it helped me because it was like
Obviously it has.
I was taking control of it.
Yeah.
I think control is a key thing. I think we've had some wonderful ideas and advice
Yeah.
from everybody about what to do. I hope some of these things will be helpful to you.
Yeah, I think so many things, like I said, would just come out. Somebody said, I wasn't sure how the conversation would go, and it just happens. And it's really interesting to hear some of the things. I think we need to bring the focus back to Maggie's, because that's where we're at today. I think one of their classes just came out. You might be able to hear that. I don't know if I've got it cut out or not, but that's okay. So what has your experience been of Maggie's? Sue?
About 13 years ago, I was asked if I would do some workshops here at Maggie's on nutrition. I worked as a dietitian at Nine Wells here, and a lot of cancer in our family. This was way beyond my husband getting cancer. I was really keen to do whatever I could, and so it's really grown, and I now do cooking groups. Well, coming to something like this, I wouldn't remember having been for Maggie's.
Sure.
So I just feel that Maggie's gives me an opportunity to contribute, the nutrition that I've, had and work on as I've gone, and just to be able to, help people to have a healthier eating pattern. So that's how my husband has started to come here now and use the groups. So yeah, Maggie's is a brilliant organisation, and I've had a lot of support from the people here through the last few months as well.
Well, I've never been here before, but I'm thinking, day out, me and Mum, let's come here, let's see it. So I think that's going to be quite fun, quite nice to go and do. Julie, I think you were in a class earlier, weren't you? So they've got classes here, don't they?
Yeah, so the week after I was diagnosed, I walked into Maggie's myself as a complete wreck. And I think the two phrases that I have about Maggie's is that you can come in here and start crying and go out laughing.
Right.
And come in laughing and go around crying, but you're crying because you're laughing so hard.
Sure.
So I immediately found a place that it wasn't a them and us. I think when you're going through the medical system, you often feel that you're on the other side of the desk and you're no longer the professional that you used to be. You're a patient. And I think when you come into Maggie's, that boundary just goes. And I think even the fact that it's open plan kind of helps with that. It must be very difficult for people working in it all the time.
Yeah.
But there isn't, there's not even that barrier there, that kind of physical barrier. But yeah, so I've attended meditation classes here, which I always wanted to do and never would have done myself, bar cancer. I've been in 3 creative writing classes, which I've just found hugely rewarding. I've met lots of friends. I've had psychologist input, which is a huge luxury. You almost want to give this package to everybody before cancer, because this is what life should be like, which has been hugely beneficial. So yeah, it's been such a lighthouse for me in the kind of choppy sea. The kids have been here, they found it really welcoming, and they know that this is where their mum goes, and it's okay, it's not a big scary place. And actually there's people that are walking about that have got cancer and have had it longer than mum has and they're still alive.
Yeah.
And that's been quite a positive thing for them as well. And just seeing that sense of hope. You always see somebody else who's been through something similar to yourself, and you didn't know these people before because we're all kind of invisible and we don't talk about it. So here it's been a huge luxury for me.
I think it'd be a great thing just to create a Maggie's, but not necessarily for cancer, just
Yes.
for good health and
Yeah.
well-being.
Yeah,
I've thought about
I'd love to do
chat
that.
sessions on that for a long time.
Yes.
What about you, Carla?
Very much the same experience. They're here for anything that you, any hurdles that you see in front of you. Very good for coming in and being able to speak to other people who are going through the same treatments, the same worries, or they've got their own worries and how they've dealt with it. And it's very realistic then, instead of talking to people third hand somehow. Cancer is very individual, but it's also a lot of people have gone through it, and they've gone through radiotherapy and chemos and the operations and things, and it's really, really helpful to be able to talk to other people who've gone through it.
Yeah.
And so coming into Maggie's, you can sit down and there are no social barriers, there are no barriers whatsoever. As you said, the open plan. I think every time I've walked in the door, somebody's greeted me, and somebody comes from somewhere. And you do feel very ill. That first day you step in and you think it's only about people that are terminal. It's not. It's about anybody that's either going through the journey themselves or caring for somebody who's going through. They're there to help, and they're there to explain if you're losing somebody else to cancer or whatever. They'll help you as well.
Yeah.
And so it's. I don't know where the NHS would be without places like Maggie's, to be honest, because the empathetic side of, the emotional side of cancer is something that perhaps the NHS are not in a financial position to deal with.
Sure.
The emotional side is massive to many of us and needs to be embraced.
And can affect your prognosis in so many ways.
Yeah,
Usually,
definitely.
you hear so often of people just decide I don't really want to go on anymore.
Well, I
Do
deal
your
with
mind-
suicidal people, and I can tell you that yes, that is a big option for somebody who's hit with a cancer diagnosis. So it's the emotional side is uppermost for me, so it's been a learning process for me.
Yes. I think I'm conscious though that, we're rather privileged to have this on our doorstep to where we live. And for those of you watching might say, well, that's all well and good. There are Maggie's centres around the UK and internationally if you're watching this internationally. But if you don't have a Maggie's on your doorstep, there are many groups and support things like this. Look it out. I think what you've heard from all of us is look to get support. You don't have to do this on your own. And there are, I mean, I've even found good Facebook groups and people that can offer just support. As you said, it's about talking and feeling like you belong. Well, not even you belong somewhere, but you're supported, isn't it? So if you don't have Maggie's, you can Google Maggie's. Please look for your local support groups, and I'm sure you'll find one.
There's so many support groups out there. I've got a poster for Andy's Man Club in my gym, and that's one for men who are going through a hard time. And from learning about that, I've learned about this massive amount of support groups that exist for all these different reasons. And there's something for everyone. You know, if you think, oh, I've got this, or I feel this way, like there's something out there. And like you said, the sort of social media aspect. Social media can actually be quite useful sometimes. It's not just a time waster. It can be useful for having like a group to talk to, getting support through that. Which I'm sure maybe you have a online support group through your work as well for people.
I'm actually freelance with my suicide prevention, and that's something I'm going back to now. I'm actually setting up my own website at the moment,
Right, brilliant.
which I'm getting help from Maggie's and people that have been introduced to. And you talked about a man's group. There's a man's, we call the Men's Shed in Dundee.
Yes,
We've got them throughout. Not just for men, although they would say it's men's. They'll be quite happily welcome women as well.
Oh, good.
Predominantly men, but there's so many help groups out there. So many that anything that you're going through, it doesn't have to be under the umbrella of cancer. You know, the umbrella is there. Cancer is just one of those things.
One of those things that can affect you, yeah. So there's groups out there. I think the take-home point is there's groups out there for you. You want to make sure that you're looking after your fitness and health. You want to make sure that you're eating well. You know, I would say another big one is trying to get a good amount of sleep. You know, 7 to 9 hours sleep a night is really what you want to get. And make sure you check yourself and take any opportunity that's given to you by the healthcare system, because a lot of countries don't have those opportunities. And as much as we might complain sometimes about certain aspects of the NHS, it's a certainly underfunded, I would always an underfunded organisation. They actually do. In my experience, I've always had a really good experience with them, and yeah, I think it's very good. Anything else we want to say now?
No, I just think I hope you found this informal but informative, and you know, if you have enjoyed this film, what we would ask you to do is perhaps support this amazing place. You can't see it, but we're looking at a very stunning view over the River Tay in Scotland. And what we'll do is maybe do some shots outside as well. There'll be a link at the bottom of the film where you can donate to Maggie's cancer centres. So if you feel inclined to do so and you have a little bit to spare, please do support it. Maggie supports many people throughout the world. People going through it, people who have relatives going through it, and our children too, so please do. Thanks ever so much for watching, and what's left to say?
Oh, we've got to do our handshake. Can we do it all the way?
I think so.
Yeah,
So this
if
is
we do that,
our
we do like
breast
this
of friends.
little handshake, right?
That's,
I'm doing no big
yeah.
Can we do a little
Can we
handshake
do?
underneath? Oh.
Can we do? Yeah. Okay.
So on 3 we're going to say 1, 2, 3, breast of friends. Breast of friends. Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Breast of friends!